Greetings and salutations. Let me know if you can hear me. Hello, hello, hello. Is the sound happening all right? Great. All right, looks like Dari can hear. Splendid. Meg says, sounds good. Emily can hear. Audio check, video check. Thank you, Kathy B. Hello, Terry. Hello, Christina. Hello to Olive and Ray. Lovely. Did I see? Yep, Claire Bear Foster is here. Emily Thatcher. I saw a random comment that Hunter should have let. Yeah, I hope Wolfgang isn't on tech tonight. Exactly. Yeah, he was causing a lot of trouble last week. Indeed. Yeah, so Emily Thatcher says Hunter should have let him have that bird. We had, I'll be damned. Wolfgang we were out in the balcony together. I've got deck chairs out there for the two of us next to each other. And he had a few instances of attempted murder today. But the most notable one was a male finch flies right past him. And he goes from totally asleep to wham! And just like in a flash. And he reaches out one of his huge snowshoe claws of death and swats the thing right out of the air, bam, onto the wood decking. And I jump up and grab him as he jumps down to grab the bird and finish the job and have a meal. And he's just the entire time going, row, 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 right? And the bird doesn't know what the hell just happened. It was just flying, minding its own business, and it got swatted out of just life. And so, the bird kind of flies off, and I'm quite sure we'll never come to any of our feeders again. Yeah, it flies off, bird cursing. Meanwhile, like Wolfgang is like I'm holding on to him, and he's going meow 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 meow. He never hisses. He never bites me. He never does any of those. Like he doesn't cross those lines, but he does make his opinions known. So with that, let's start this evening with one of T.S. Eliot's. This is Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats by T.S. Eliot. From that book, this poem is called Mungo Jerry and Rumpelteazer. Mungo Jerry and Rumpelteazer were a very notorious couple of cats, as knockabout clowns, quick-change comedians, tightrope walkers, and acrobats. They had an extensive reputation. They made their home in Victoria Grove. That was merely their center of operation, for they were incurably given to rove. They were very well known in Cornwall Gardens, in Launceston Place, and in Kensington Square. They had really a little more reputation than a couple of cats can very well bear. Can relate to that, can't you? If the area window was found ajar and the basement looked like a field of war, if a tile or two came loose on the roof, which presently ceased to be waterproof, if the drawers were pulled out from the bedroom chests and you couldn't find one of your winter vests, or after supper one of the girls suddenly missed her Woolworth pearls, then the family would say, "It's that horrible cat! It was Mungo Jerry or Rumpelteazer," and most of the time they left it at that. Mungo Jerry and Rumpelteazer had a very unusual gift of the gab. They were highly efficient cat burglars as well, and remarkably smart at a smash and grab. They made their home in Victoria Grove. They had no regular occupation. They were plausible fellows and liked to engage a friendly policeman in conversation. When the family assembled for Sunday dinner with their minds made up that they wouldn't get thinner on Argentine joint potatoes and greens, and the cook would appear from behind the scenes and say in a voice that was broken with sorrow, "I'm afraid you must wait and have dinner tomorrow, for the joint has gone from the oven like that," then the family would say, "It's that horrible cat, it was Mungo Jerry," or Rumpelteazer, and most of the time, they left it at that. Mungo, Jerry, and Rumpelteazer had a wonderful way of working together. Some of the time you would say it was luck, and some of the time you would say it was weather. They would go through the house like a hurricane, and no sober person could take his oath. Was it Mungo Jerry or Rumpelteazer, or could you have sworn that it mightn't have been both? When you heard a dining room smash, or up from the pantry there came a loud crash, or down from the library came a loud ping from a vase that was commonly said to be Ming, then the family would say, "Now, which was which cat? It was Mungo Jerry and Rumpelteazer," and there's nothing to be done about that. I love looking down at the chat between poems and seeing all the good folks greeting each other. Yes, bird lives matter, indeed. I think hashtag BLM is taken, but yes, bird lives matter. I was yelling that at him. I have no idea. Well, like, there are neighbors in another cabin across the street and slightly down the hill that must have heard me yelling, "Bird lives matter." And him going, "Meow, meow, meow, meow." They must have, didn't even occur to me till this very moment. That conversation must have been actually overheard. I just say again, I love looking down and seeing all the people greeting each other in the chat here. Emily got her one and done today. All right. Congratulations. Congratulations, Emily. As most of you may know, I got my first dose of the Pfizer vaccine Friday. It was on Good Friday, so that'll be easy to remember. Several people have asked if I had any side effects, have I had any symptoms, any kinds of things, and now, the stock answer is that the only side effect I've had is one Facebook troll who had to come and spout some anti-vaccine rhetoric on my Facebook page. But I bring this up. Thank you, Deep Sky, dude. I bring this up specifically with something, a very good silver lining that came out of this. This is not a call to arms to run to my Facebook page and tar and feather the guy. This is most of the conversation that we had, and it all stayed civil, by the way. This is someone I know from the music world. Most of the conversation we had was a conspicuous lack of axioms. There were no definitions. Like, most of the conversation was a simple disagreement on facts. X, Y, X, Y, X, Y, X, Y. There were no agreed upon definitions. Then the conversation took a really interesting turn, a couple of pages in probably, where he said, no person is responsible for the death of any other person from a virus. And I thought that was an interesting statement, because now we don't just disagree on facts. Now we have a divergence of ethics. And My ethical position, I think, is best expressed by this poem. Forgive me, I read this recently, but my position on the matter was best expressed by John Donne. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never sinned to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Hug Day is coming. I love that, Terry. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so Deep Sky Dude, with those kind of peeps, how did you phrase it? With you just gotta bless and release. So the reason that I engaged him in the conversation at all was not to change his mind on the subject. I was certain I was not going to. It crossed my mind to just delete the comment, but knowing this person and knowing it better than likely was going to stay civil, I engaged in the conversation, not, again, with the objective of changing his mind, but knowing how many people would read the thread later and see what kind of thought goes into which position. So hopefully people who may be on the fence read that conversation and make a choice for the betterment of humankind. Speaking of the betterment of humankind, Paul Carganilla has just joined us. I'm going to hold this poem to go between the next bits. This is another excerpt from Walden Pond by Henry David Thoreau. This is called Baker Farm. Sometimes I rambled to pine groves, standing like temples and rippling with light, so soft and green and shady that the Druids would have forsaken their oaks to worship in these. Or to the cedar wood beyond Flint's Pond, where the trees, springing higher and higher, are fit to stand before Valhalla, and the creeping juniper covers the ground with wreaths full of fruit. Or to swamps where the lichen hangs in festoons from the white spruce trees, and toadstools, round tables of the swamp gods cover the ground. And more beautiful fungi adorn the stumps like butterflies or shells, where the swamp pink and dogwood grow. The red alderberry grows like eyes of imps, and the wild hollyberries make the beholder forget his home with their beauty, and he is dazzled and tempted by nameless other wild forbidden fruits, too fair for mortal taste. Instead of calling on some scholar, I paid many a visit to particular trees standing far away in the middle of some pasture, or in the depths of a swamp, or of a wood, or on a hilltop. The black birch, of which we have some handsome specimens 2 feet in diameter. Its cousin, the yellow birch, with its loose golden perfumed vest. The beech, which has so neat a bowl, and beautifully lichen painted, perfect in all its details. It is worth the while to see the silver grain sparkle when you split this wood. Some taller mast of a pine or a more perfect hemlock than usual, standing like a pagoda in the midst of the woods. These were the shrines I visited, both summer and winter. Once it chanced that I stood in the very abutment of a rainbow's arch, which filled the lower stratum of the atmosphere, tinging the grass and leaves around and dazzling me as if I looked right through colored crystal. It was like a lake of rainbow light in which for a short while I lived like a dolphin. As I walked on the railroad causeway, I used to wonder at the halo of light around my shadow and would fancy myself one of the elect. It was particularly conspicuous when the grass was moist with dew, especially in the morning, but also by moonlight. I set out one afternoon to go a-fishing to Fairhaven through the woods to eke out my scanty fare of vegetables. My way led through Pleasant Meadow, an adjunct of the Baker farm. I thought of living there before I went to Walden. I hooked the apples, leapt the brook, and scared the muskrat and the trout. It was one of those afternoons which seem indefinitely long, in which many events may happen, though it was already half spent when I started. Along the way, there came up a shower, which compelled me to stand half an hour under a pine, piling boughs over my head and wearing my handkerchief for a shed. And when at length I found myself suddenly in the shadow of a cloud, and the thunder began to rumble with such emphasis that I could do no more than listen to it. The gods must be proud, thought I, with such forked flashes to rout a poor unarmed fisherman. So I made haste for shelter to the nearest hut, which had long been uninhabited. But therein, as I found, dwelt now John Field, an Irishman, and his wife and several children. One was a broad-faced boy who assisted his father at his work, and now came running by his side from the bog to escape the rain. There we sat together under that part of the roof which leaked the least, while it showered and thundered without. I had sat there many times of old. An honest, hard-working man, plainly, was John Field, and also his wife. The chickens, which had also taken their shelter here from the rain, stalked about the room like members of the family. They stood and looked in my eye or pecked at my shoe significantly. I purposefully talked to him as if he were a philosopher, or desired to be one. The shower was now over, and a rainbow above the eastern woods promised a fair evening, so I took my departure. As I was leaving the Irishman's roof after the rain, bending my steps again to the pond, wading in retired meadows and sloughs and bog holes and forlorn and savage places, my haste to catch pickerel appeared for an instant trivial to me, who had been sent to school and college. But as I ran down the hill toward the reddening west, with the rainbow over my shoulder and some faint tinkling sounds borne to my ear through the cleansed air from I know not what quarter, my good genius seemed to say, "Go fish and hunt far and wide day by day, farther and wider, and rest thee by many brooks and hearthsides without misgiving. Rise free from care before the dawn, and seek adventures. Let the noon find thee by other lakes, and the night overtake thee everywhere at home. There are no larger fields than these, no worthier games than may here be played. Grow wild according to thy nature, like these sedges and brakes. Let the thunder rumble. Take shelter under the cloud. Enjoy the land, but own it not. Through want of enterprise and faith, men are where they are, buying and selling and spending their lives like serfs. I should be glad if all the meadows on the earth were left in a wild state, if that were the consequences of men's beginning to redeem themselves. Men come tamely home at night, only from the next field or street where their household echoes haunt, and their life pines because it breathes its own breath over again. Their shadows, morning and evening, reach farther than their daily steps. We should come home from far, from adventures and from perils and discoveries every day with new experience and character. Before I had reached the pond, some fresh impulse had brought out John Field. But he disturbed only a couple of fins while I was catching a fair string, and he said it was his luck. But when we changed seats in the boat, luck changed seats too. New Haven was mentioned in that excerpt from Walden, and suddenly I just remembered this flash of memory when I was like 20, and I went to Walden Pond for an afternoon when I was on a road trip in a car by myself. I told this anecdote on a Lovecast when I read an excerpt from Walden previously, but I just now remembered getting like a gas station sandwich or something like that in New Haven next to Walden Pond. The other little tidbit that jumped out at me, I forgot to point out afterward, was in T.S. Eliot in Mungo Jerry and Rumple Teaser. One of my favorite lines from O Brother, Where Art Thou was excised cleanly, where George Clooney as Ulysses looks at the Cyclops and says, "I see, like me, you are also endowed with the gift of the gab." I love that phrase, gift of the gab. Melissa Catano, all right. My house is well-rounded. I'm glad y'all are vaccinated. That's wonderful. That is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And yes, Emily, please keep us posted. When I got my first dose, I felt so normal, fine, and whatever. I went out for a 7-mile hike right afterward, and I couldn't feel no soreness. The only time, if I pressed with my hand right down on it, that I could feel in my shoulder, like, oh yeah, there's like on a 1 to 10 pain scale, it was less than 1. It was just like, I wouldn't even say it was mildly uncomfortable. It was really. It was pleasantly uneventful. So I'm going to read one more poem before the highlight short story of the evening. This is Places by Sarah Teasdale. There was a bush with scarlet berries, and there were hemlocks heaped with snow. With a sound like surf on long sea beaches, they took the wind and let it go. The hills were shining in their samite. Fold after fold they flowed away. Let come what may, your eyes were saying. At least we two have had today. Yeah, I am. I'm elated to see all the folks in the chat that are getting vaccinated, looking forward to getting vaccinated, and reporting good things about their families getting vaccinated. This feels like progress. Oh, this feels like a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you. Tonight's short story of focus is by a lady named Myra Kelly. She was born in 1876 and died in 1910. She was Irish. She was born in Dublin. She was an American school teacher and author. She came to the United States with her father. They ended up in Manhattan. And unfortunately, she met an untimely demise by another plague of her era. She passed away at the age of 35 of tuberculosis, which I am so extraordinarily grateful that we have a cure for now. The story was published in 1910, like right before or just as she died. I don't know which. This story is called Friends by Myra Kelly. My mama, reported Morris, choosing a quiet moment during a writing period to engage his teacher's attention. My mama likes you shall come on mine house for see her. Very well, dear, answered Miss Bailey with a patience born of many such messages from the parents of her small charges. I think I shall have time to go this afternoon. My mama, Morris began again. She says I shall tell you excuse how she do not send you no letter. She couldn't to send no letter while her eyes ain't healthy. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, said the teacher with a little stab of regret for her prompt acceptance of Mr. Małgolowski's invitation, for all of the ailments which the children shared so generously with her teacher. The teacher, Miss Bailey, had learned to dread most the many and painful disorders of the eye. She knew, however, that Mrs. Małgolowski was not one of those who utter unnecessary cries for help, being in this regard, as in many others, a striking contrast to the majority of parents with whom Miss Bailey came in contact. To begin with, Miss Małgolowski had but one child, her precious and only Morris Małgolowski. In addition to this, she was thrifty and neat, independent of spirit, and astonishingly outspoken of mind, like him. She neither shared nor understood the gregarious spirit which bound her neighbors together. No groups of chattering, gesticulating matrons ever congregating in her Monroe Street apartment. No love of gossip ever held her on street corners or on steps. Her hospitalities were as serious as her manner, her invitations as deliberate as her slow English speech. And Miss Bailey found herself again and again trying to imagine what the days would be to Mrs. Modulowski if her keen, shrewd eyes were to be darkened and useless. At 3 o'clock, she set out with Morris, leaving the board of monitors to set room 18 to rights with no more direct supervision than the occasional look and words from the stout Miss Blake, whose kingdom classroom lay just across the hall. And as she hurried through the early cold of a November afternoon, grew so much that she was almost relieved to learn that Mrs. Modulowski's complaint was a slow-forming cataract, and her supplication that Miss Bailey would keep a watchful eye upon Morris while his mother was at the hospital undergoing treatment and operation. "But of course," Miss Bailey agreed. "I shall be delighted to do what I can, Mrs. Modulowski. Though it seems to me that one of your neighbors—"
"Neighbors!"
snorted the matron.
"What you think the neighbors make with my little boy? They got 4, 5 dozens children themselves. They got no time for look on Morris. They come maybe in mine house and break mine dishes, and rubber on what is here and set by mine furniture and talks. What do they ever know over taking care on mine house? They ain't ladies. They is educated only on surface. Me, I was raised private and expensive in Russia. I was ladies. And you is ladies. You is Christian lady. That is unfortunate. But that makes me nothings. I want you shall look on Morris."
But I can't come here and take care of him," Miss Bailey pointed out. You see that for yourself, don't you, Mrs. Modulowski? I'm sorry as I can be about your eyes, and I hope with all my heart that the operation will be successful, but I shouldn't have time to come here and take care of things.
That ain't how my mama means,"
Morris explained. He was leaning against the teacher and stroking her hand-warming muff as he spoke.
My mama only means money." "That is what I means,"
said Mrs. Modulowski, nodding her head until her quite incredible wig slipped back and forth upon it.
"Morris needs he shall have money. He could to fix the house so good like I can. He don't need no neighbors rubberin'. He could to buy what he need on the store, but 10 cents a day he needs. His papa works by Harlem. He has got fine jobs and he gets fine monies, but he couldn't to come down here for to take care of Morris. And the doctor, he says, I shall now go on to the hospital. And anyway," she added sadly, "I couldn't to see things. He says I shall lay in the hospital 3 weeks, maybe. That is 21 days. And for Morris, it is $2.10. I give him money."
And she fumbled for her purse in various hiding places about her ample person. And you want me to be banker?" cried Miss Bailey. "To keep the money and give Morris 10 cents a day? Is that it?"
"Sure,"
answered Mrs. Modulowski.
"It's an awful lot of money," grieved Morris. 10 cents a day is an awful lot of money for one boy. No, no, my golden one, cried his mother. It is but right that thou shouldst have plenty of money, and thy teacher, a Christian lady, though honest, will give thee 10 cents every morning. Behold, I pay the rent before I go, and with the rent paid and with the 10 cents a day, thou wilt live like a landlord. Yes, yes, Morris broke in, evidently repeating some familiar warning. And every day I will say my prayers and wash the face and keep neighbors out. And on Thursdays and on Sundays I shall go to the hospital for see you. And on Saturdays, broke in Miss Bailey, you will come to my house and spend the day with me. He's too little, Miss Małgolowski, to go to the synagogue alone. That would be awful nice, breathed Morris. I shall go on your house. I am much loving mit your dog. How? Snorted his mother. Dogs ain't nothing but foolishness. They eat something fierce and they don't work. That is how my mama thinks, Morris hastened to explain. But my mama, she never seen your dog. He is a awful nice dog. I am loving much with him. I don't needs I shall see him, said Mrs. Małgolowski somewhat tartly. I seen already lots from dogs. Don't you go make no foolishness with him. Don't you go and get chowed off of him. No, of course not, Miss Bailey hastened to assure her. He will only play with Rover if I should be busy. He'll be safer at my house than he would be on the streets, and you wouldn't expect him to stay in the house all day. After more talk and many warnings, the arrangement was completed. Miss Bailey was entrusted with $2.10 and the censorship of Morris. A day or so later, Mrs. Małgolowski retired, indomitable, to her darkened room in the hospital, and the neighbors were inexorably shut out of her apartment. All their offers of help, all their proffers of advice were politely refused by Morris. All their questions and visits politely dodged. And every morning, Miss Bailey handed her monitor of the goldfish bowl, Morris, his princely stipend, adding to it from time to time just a little bit of fruit. The Saturday after his mother's departure, Morris was in the company of the antiquated Rover, a collie who no longer roved farther than his own backyard, and who accepted Morris's frank admiration with a notable condescension and a few rheumatic, playful romps. Miss Bailey's mother was also hospitable, and her sister did what she could to amuse the quaint little child with the big eyes and the soft voice and the pretty little foreign manners he always had. But Morris preferred Rover to any of them. Everything had seemed so pleasant and so successful that Miss Bailey looked upon a repetition of this visit as a matter of course, and was greatly surprised on the succeeding Friday afternoon when the monitor of the goldfish bowl, Morris, said that he intended to spend the next day at home. Oh, no, she remonstrated. You mustn't stay at home. I'm going to take you out to the park, and we're going to have all kinds of fun. Wouldn't you rather go and see the lions and the elephants with me than stay at home all by yourself? For some space, Morris was silent. Then he managed with a consuming effort. I ain't by myself,
Has your father come home? Said the teacher.
No, ma'am.
And surely it's not a neighbor. You remember what your mother said about the neighbors, how you're not to let them in.
It is not neighbors,
said Morris. Then who? Well, Morris raised his eyes to her, his beautiful, black, pleading eyes, praying for the understanding and the sympathy which had never failed him yet.
It is a friend.
Nathan Spiderwitz? She asked. Morris shook his head and gave teacher to understand that the monitor of the window boxes came under the ban of neighbor. Well, who is it, dear? She asked again. Is it anyone that I know?
No, ma'am.
None of the boys in school?
No, ma'am.
Have you known him long?
No, ma'am.
Does your mother know him?
Oh, teacher, no, ma'am. My mama don't know him.
Well, where did you meet him?
Teacher, on the on curb over yesterday on the night.
Morris began, seeing that explanation was inevitable.
I lays on mein bed und I thinks how mein mama has got a sickness und how mein papa is by Harlem and how I ain't got nobody beside of me. And teacher, it makes me cold in mein heart. So I couldn't to lay no more. So I puts me on mid clothes, some more clothes, and I go by the street. So I sits by the curb, and I thinks on my mama how I seen her mit bandages on the face, and teacher, Miss Bailey, I cries over it.
Of course you did, honey, said teacher, putting her arm about him. Poor little lonely chap, of course you cried.
Yes, teacher, yes, ma'am. It is not for boys they shall cry, but I cries over it. And soon something touches me by mine side, and I turns and my friend, he was sitting by side of me, and he don't say nothings. Teacher, no, ma'am. He don't say nothings. He only he looks on me, and in his eyes stands tears. So that makes me better in mine heart, and I don't cries no more. I sits and looks on mine friends, and on my friend he sits and looks on me with smiling looks. So I goes by mine house, and my friend, he comes by mine house too. And I lays on my bed, and my friend, he lays by mine side. When all times in that night I open mine eyes and thinks on how my mama is got a sickness, and my papa is by Harlem, my friend, he is by mine side. And I don't cries. I don't cries never, no more the whiles my friend is by me. And I couldn't to go on to your house tomorrow, the whiles I don't know if my friend likes Rover.
Well, of course he'd like him, cried Miss Bailey. Rover would play with him, just as he plays with you.
No, ma'am, Morris maintained. Mein friend is too little to play mit Rover.
Is he such a little fellow?
Yes, ma'am, awfully little.
And he's been with you? Ever since the day before yesterday?
Teacher, yes, ma'am.
Does he seem to be happy and all right?
Teacher, yes, ma'am. But
asked Miss Bailey, suddenly practical. What does the poor little fellow eat? Of course, 10 cents would buy a lot of food for one boy, but not so very much for two.
Teacher, no, mum, says Morris. It ain't so very much.
Well then, said Miss Bailey, suppose I give you 20 cents a day as long as a little strange friend is with you.
Oh, that could be awful nice, Morris agreed. And, Mrs. Bailey, he went on, sooner you don't need all yours lunch. Mine friends could eat yours lunch, maybe?
Oh, I'm so sorry, she cried. It's ham today.
That don't make nothings mit mein friend, said Morris. Mein friend, he likes ham.
Well, now, Morris, said Miss Bailey very gravely, as all the meanings of this announcement spread themselves. This is a very serious thing. You know how your mother feels about strangers, and you know how she feels about Christians, and what will she say to you, and what will she say to me when she hears that a strange little Christian is living with you? Of course, dearie, I know that you must be dreadfully lonely in the long evenings, but I'm afraid your mother will not be pleased to think of your having somebody to stay with you. Wouldn't you rather come to my house and live there all the time until your mother is better? You know, she added as a crowning inducement, Rover's there. But Morris betrayed no enthusiasm.
I guess, said he, I ain't loving so awful much mit Rover. He is too big. I'm liking the little dogs mit brown eyes, what walks by their legs and carries things by their mouths. Did you ever see dogs like that?
In the circus, answered Teacher. Where did you see them?
A boy by our block, answered Morris. He's got one. He's loving much with that dog, and that dog is loving much with him.
Well now, perhaps you could teach Rover to walk on his hind legs and carry things in his mouth, suggested the Teacher. And as for this new little Christian friend of yours,
I don't know be he a Christian,
Morris admitted with reluctant candor.
He ain't never said nothing over it to me. Only Irisher lady what lives by our house, she says my friend is an Irisher.
Well, very well, dear. Then of course he's a Christian, Miss Bailey assured him, and I shan't interfere with you tomorrow, but you may stay at home and play with him if you like. But we can't let this thing go on, you know. This kind of thing never would do when your mother comes back from the hospital. Have you thought of all that, Morris? You must make your friend understand it.
I tells him, Morris promised. I don't know can he understand. He's very little.
Well, then tell him once again, honey, Miss Bailey advised, and make him understand that he must go back to his own people as soon as your mother is well. Where are his own people? I can't understand how anyone so little could be wandering about with no one to take care of him.
A teacher, I take care of him, Morris pointed out.
All that night and all the next day, Miss Bailey's imagination reverted again and again to the two little ones in Mrs. Małgolowski's immaculate apartment. Even increasing blindness had not been allowed to interfere with sweeping and scrubbing and dusting, and when teacher thought of that patient matron as she lay in her hospital cot, trusting so securely to her Christian friend's guardianship of her son and their home, she fretted herself into feeling that it was her duty to go down to the Monroe Street apartment and investigate. There was at first no sound when, after climbing endless stairs, she came to Mrs. Modulowski's door. But as the thumping of the heart and the singing in her ears abated somewhat, she detected Morris's familiar treble through the door.
"Bread,"
it said.
"it is awfully healthy for you. Only you doesn't eat it without chewing. I never in my world seen how you eats."
Although the words were admonitory, they lost all didactic effect by the wealth of love and tenderness which sang in Morris's voice. There was a note of happiness in the voice, too. She rested against the doorframe, and Morris went on.
"I guess you don't know what is polite. You shall better come on school, and Miss Bailey could learn you what is polite and healthy for you. No. You couldn't to have no meat. No, sir. No, ma'am. No. You couldn't to have no meat till I cuts it for you. You could to maybe make yourself a sickness."
Miss Bailey put her hand on the door, and it yielded noiselessly to her touch and revealed to her guardian eyes her ward and his little friend. They were seated face to face at the table. Everything was very neat and clean and most properly set out. A little lamp was burning clearly. Morris's hair was parted for about an inch back from his forehead and sleeked wetly down upon his brow. The guest had evidently undergone similar preparation for the meal. Each had a napkin tied around his neck, and as the teacher watched them, Morris carefully prepared his guest's dinner, while the guest, an Irish terrier with quick eyes and one down-flopped ear, accepted his admonishings with a good-natured grace and watched him with an adoring eye. The guest was the first to detect the stranger's presence. He seized a piece of bread in his teeth, jumped to the ground, and walking up to the teacher on his hind legs, hospitably dropped the refreshment on the floor at her feet.
"Oh, teacher! Cried Morris, half in dismay at discovery and half in joy that this so sure confidant should share his secret and appreciate his friend. "Oh, teacher, Mrs. Bailey, this is the friend that I was telling you over. See how he walks on his feet? See how he got his smiling looks? See how he carries some things by his teeth? All times he makes like that. Rover, he doesn't carry no things. Only Easy could make them things."
"Oh, his name is Izzy?" asked Miss Bailey, grasping at this conversational scrawl and shaking the paw which the stranger was presenting to her. "And this is the friend that you told me about?" "You let me think," she chided with as much severity as Morris had shown to his Izzy. "You made me think that he was a boy."
"I had afraid,"
said the monitor of the class goldfish bowl, quite frankly. So had teacher, as she reviewed the situation from Miss Modulowski's chair of state and watched the friends at supper. It was a revelation of solicitude on one side and patient gratitude on the other. Morris ate hardly anything, and was soon at teacher's knee. Izzy was in her lap, discussing ways and means. He refused to entertain any plan which would separate him immediately from Izzy, but he was at last brought to see the sweet reasonableness of preparing his mother's mind by degrees to accept another member to the family. Und he eats, his protector was forced to admit. He eats something fierce, Mrs. Bailey. Is much like a man he eats. And my mama, I don't know what she will say. She won't leave me. She won't leave me. I shall keep him. From long I had a little bit of a dog, and she wouldn't leave me. I should keep him. And he didn't eat so much like Izzy eats, neither. And I can't very well keep him, said Miss Bailey sadly, because, you see, there's Rover. Rover mightn't like it. But there is one thing I can do. I'll keep him for a few days when your mother comes back, and we'll see, you and I, if we can persuade her to let you have him always. She wouldn't never do, said Morris sadly. That other dog, didn't I told you how he didn't eat so much like Izzy, and she wouldn't let me to have him. That is a cinch. Oh, dear, cried teacher, we can only try. We'll do our very, very best. This guilty secret had a very dampening effect upon the joy with which Morris watched for his mother's recovery. Upon the day set for her return, he was a miserable battlefield of love and duty. Early in the morning, Izzy had been transferred to Miss Bailey's yard. Rover was chained to his house. Izzy was tied to the wall at a safe distance from him, and they proceeded to make the day hideous for the whole neighborhood. Morris remained at home to greet his mother, received her praises, cooked the dinner, and set out for afternoon school with a heavy heart and a heavier conscience. Nothing had occurred in those first hours to show any change in Mrs. Modulowski's opinion of home pets. At 3:15, the goldfish, having received perfunctory attention, and the board of monitors being left again to do their worst unguarded, Morris and teacher set out to prepare Miss Modulowski's mind for the adoption of Izzy. They found it very difficult. Mrs. Modulowski, restored a vision, was so hospitable, so festive in her manner, so loquacious and so self-congratulatory that it was difficult to insert even the tiniest word into the structure of her monologue. Finally, Miss Bailey managed to catch her attention upon financial matters. You gave me, she said, $2.10, and Morris has managed so beautifully that he has not used it all and has 5 cents to return to you. He's a very wonderful little boy, Miss Modulowski, she added, smiling at her favorite, just to give him a little courage. He is good boy, Mrs. Modulowski admitted. Don't you get lonesome sometimes by yourself here? Well, said Miss Bailey, he wasn't always alone. No? Queried the matron with divided attention. She was looking for her purse, in which she wished to stow Morris's surplus. No. I was here once or twice, and then a little friend of his... Friends, the mother repeated with a glare. Was friends here in mine house? Miss Bailey began a purposefully vague reply, but Miss Modulowski was not listening to her. She had searched the pockets of the gown she wore, then various other places, then a large bag. Ever hurriedly and more hurriedly, she repeated this performance 2 or 3 times, and then proceeded to shake and wring the clothing which she had worn that morning.
Gott,
She broke out at last.
mein Gott, it don't stands.
And she began to appear about the floor with eyes not quite yet adjusted. Morris easily recognized the symptoms. She's lost her pocketbook, he told Miss Bailey.
Yes, I lost it,
Wailed Miss Modulowski. Then the whole party participated in the search. Over and under the furniture, the carpets, the bed, the stove, over and under everything in the apartment went Miss Modulowski and Morris. All the joy of homecoming and of well-being was darkened and blotted out by this new calamity. And Constance Bailey almost wept in sympathy. But the pocketbook was gone. Absolutely gone. Though Mrs. Modulowski called heaven and earth to witness that she had had it in her hand when she came in. Another month's rent was due. The money to pay it was in the pocketbook. Mr. Modulowski had visited his wife on Sunday and had given her all his earnings as some salve to the pain of her eyes. Eviction, starvation, every kind of terror and disaster were thrown into Mrs. Modulowski's wailing. Miss Bailey was about to suggest as a last resort that a search should be made of the dark and crannied stairs where a purse might lie undiscovered for hours, when a dull scratching made itself heard through the general lamentation. It came from a point very low on the door, and the same conviction seized upon Morris and upon Miss Bailey at the same moment. Mrs. Modulowski approached the door with eyes and mind far removed from what she was doing. She turned the handle, and entered Izzy, beautifully erect upon his hind legs, with a yard or two of rope trailing behind him, and a pocketbook fast in his teeth. Pure surprise took Mrs. Modulowski. She staggered back into a chair and stared before her. Izzy came daintily in, sniffed at Morris, sniffed at Miss Bailey, sniffed at Mrs. Modulowski's skirts, identified her as the owner of the pocketbook, laid it at her feet, and extended a paw to be shaken.
Mein Gott, said Mrs. Modulowski, what for a dog is that?
She counted her wealth, shook Izzy's paw, and then stooped forward, gathering him into her large embrace, and cried like a baby.
Mein Gott, she wailed again, and then added, He ain't dog at all. This one is friends.
Miss Bailey had been sent to a good college and had been instructed long and hard in psychology. So, she knew the moment when she met it. She now arose with congratulations and farewells. Mrs. Modulowski arose also with Izzy still in her arms. She lavished endearments upon him and caresses upon his short black nose. Boop. And Izzy received them all with enthusiastic gratitude. "And I think," said Miss Bailey in parting, "that you had better let the dog come with me. He seems a nice enough little thing. Quiet, gentle, very intelligent. He can live in the yard with Rover." Morris turned his large eyes from one to another of his rulers, and Izzy, also good at knowing moments, stretched out a pointed pink tongue and licked Mrs. Modulowski's cheek. "This dog," said the lady majestically, "is mine. Nobody couldn't never to have him. When I was in my trouble, it was that dog. Here, he stays with me. Morris, my golden one, you
wouldn't to have no feelings about Mama having dogs. You wouldn't to have Mads?
No, ma'am, responded her obedient son.
Mrs. Bailey, she says it for boys. They should make all things what is meat loving cats and dogs and horses. Good, said his mother. I guess maybe that ain't such a foolishness.
It was not until nearly bedtime that Mrs. Modulowski reverted to that part of Miss Bailey's conversation preceding the discovery of the loss of the purse.
So, my golden one, she began,
lying back in her chair with Izzy on her lap.
So, you had friends by the house when Mama was in hospital? Only one?
Morris answered faintly.
Well, I ain't scolding, said his mother. Where is your friend? I likes I shall look on him. Ain't he coming around tonight?
No, ma'am, answered Morris, settling himself at her side and laying his head close to his friend.
He couldn't go out by nights while he gets adopted by a lady and my mama.
Boop indeed. Well, this concludes this evening's Fireside Tales with Wolfgang. I will, of course, keep the camera going for a few minutes so everyone can say goodnight to everyone else in the chat. And I will see you all for Lovecast 51 this Thursday at 6 o'clock. Thank you for joining us.